Hello, everyone. We're going to keep letting some more people in and get started in about a minute or two. But if you would like, you could drop your names and organization in chat. And then let's put what your favorite part of April so far has been.
The
It's been
rain.
an interesting month, so I'm curious to see what people are saying, especially in the state of Kentucky. And then while you guys are doing that, we can start introducing ourselves. My name's Andrew Alvey. I'm a policy and advocacy analyst at Kentucky Youth Advocates, focusing on child welfare policy, which means I do a lot of the FACE It policy work. And then my favorite part of April so far has been like that one little bit of time where it wasn't raining and it was warm outside. It was like only like a couple days, but those were nice.
I can't remember those.
It was like 2 days, I think. And then I'll let Lauren introduce herself.
Yeah, I was trying to react to all the people who were putting flowers in the in the chat because that's what I'm happy about too. My plants are actually starting to bloom. I'm Lauren. I'm a data research analyst, and I'm happy to be here to show you our new data dashboard.
And then Jane, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Jane Herms with Family Nurturing Center in Northern Kentucky. And like you, Andrew, I liked those few days. They are few and far between, but I think the best thing is the promise of warmer weather that I keeps getting delayed, but I feel like is right around the corner for some extended sunshine. And I'll pass it to Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm part of our Kentucky Youth Advocates, part of our FACE IT team.
Okay. And I think we have a couple more people joining in. So keep putting your name, if you haven't already, your name, organization, and then what your favorite part of April has been in the chat. Okay. And then I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. If Zoom lets me share my screen, it's kind of annoying sometimes. There we go. Can everyone see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about our new data dashboard. Thank you to everyone who's joining us, and then a special thank you to Corsair for Kids, who continues to be the backbone of the FACE It movement, and whose partnership has been instrumental in both helping us create this dashboard and helping us push for the policy changes that we're going to talk about later on in the webinar. For some background to the FACE It movement, FACE It is committed to ending child abuse and neglect in Kentucky, and we do that through 4 core cornerstones that guide everything we do. First, we galvanize unlikely allies by connecting unexpected individuals to the FACE It movement and empowering their participation in abuse prevention efforts. Second, we work to deepen partner capacity. We know that our partners are doing incredible work, so we make sure that they have access to the tools, training, and support they need to strengthen their impact and prevent abuse in their communities. Third, we face the facts, which is what today is all about. We activate our network around the latest data and research to better understand the realities of child abuse and neglect and how we can respond in both smarter and more effective ways. And then finally, we bolster parent and caregiver connection, supporting efforts that strengthen families, reduce stress, and build community, because connected caregivers are key to keeping kids safe. Today's webinar is going to be focused on that third cornerstone, facing the facts. And we're especially excited to share more about our newly launched FACE It Data Dashboard. To help walk us through the dashboard, what it includes, how to use it, and how it can support your work, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren. who's played like a key role in bringing the whole project to life. And then I'm going to stop sharing so Lauren can share her screen and show you guys the dashboard.
Let's see here. Why is this not letting me do this now? Of course it's not. There we go. Let's see here. Okay. Apologies. I have been having issues with screen sharing lately, in case you couldn't tell. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I got some nods there. Good. Okay. So this is what it currently looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and transition into full screen mode, which is right up here, just so you guys can get a better look at it. And now I can't see anything, so I'm going to read my notes. Okay, so the major reasons we wanted to change this up is because our old dashboard had a lot of really good information on it, but it was kind of a little bit clunky and hard to read. We wanted to make this a little bit easier for you to read, to find things, make it more fun to look at. And I think it had been the same for probably about at least, 5 or so years. And so we figured it was time for a nice little refresh here. What I'd like to do next is go through some of the definitions and the data sources that we have, which are going to be on the first page. Some of you may be familiar with these. The reports that met or did not meet acceptance criteria is pretty self-explanatory. The children in substantiated investigations is where the DCBS found that it was more likely than not that abuse occurred. And there are sources out on the internet that can give you the full legal definition, but I'm not a particular fan of those. The children living in out-of-home care is the number of kids that are in out-of-home care at the end of the state fiscal year. So it's not necessarily, it's a point in time measurement. So it gives us an idea, but not necessarily the full picture. And then child fatalities and near fatalities is the most serious one. And those are ones where DCBS and physicians have determined that a child has died from abuse or neglect or has been seriously injured by abuse or neglect. We also have some data available by race and ethnicity, which is always nice when we can have it. And then we have some common abbreviations and symbols that we will see throughout the dashboard, depending on which area we're looking at. So if everyone is sort of comfortable with this, I'm going to go back to the first page and just give a little bit of an overview of some of the things that you're going to see. So up in this right-hand corner, generally up in here where I went the first time, there will be a download and share link tools. You can download these. It will download the pictures that you see on the screen and won't necessarily download the data, just the pictures. You can download all of the slides, share them, look at it in full screen. And then the call out icons are going to be particularly important. These are basically what you're going to see next to some of the issues and data points that we see, and they all have a little bit of a different meaning. So this will give you the definitions associated with these points. This will give you the idea of where we found this data. And then this is like additional contextual information, because as great as these are, it's not super helpful for like putting contextual information in there. At the bottom is clicking through the slides. And then sometimes there will be some drop-down menus over here where you can look at different options. And honestly, unfortunately, it's best viewed in a full screen mode. It is not very friendly for phones. It does work really well on a laptop though. So let me see where we're going next. Let's go over to our data dashboard snapshot, which gives us the basic, for those of you that like numbers and not necessarily pictures, this is going to be your wheelhouse. It gives us an idea of from where we started in state fiscal year of 2014 to where we are now in state fiscal year 2024, and the general change over time. So obviously some of these, we'd like to see decrease, like the reports that met acceptance criteria. And some of them we would like to see increase, like the reports that did not meet acceptance criteria. So it kind of varies on which variable we're looking at. Up here, you can see the contextual information up here, and then the definitions There's a lot of them and they're very big. And then the data notes where you'll find any asterisks or any other symbols and where we got this data from. So now some of the things I'd like to sort of talk to you about as far as data caveats go. Oh, well, this is our racial data. Let me get back to that in a moment. Some of the caveats that we see is that like, for instance, in 2019 through, I want to say 2022 or 2018 through 2022, there were some changes to the intake criteria, which changed how the cases were evaluated when they were reported. And so that might be part of the reason why we're starting to see a slow decline in the numbers of kids in substantiated investigations. So while this is overall a good thing, we also want to keep that in mind, that because of those changes, that might be part of the reason. And again, the reports made to CPS, basically, we sort of have this up and down, but the one that we're really focused on is the ones that met the acceptance criteria. We also have the racial data up here. So children in reports, it will also change here. So you can look at and see for the different racial categories. And since we only have limited categories for the racial data, there are going to be more drop-down menus over here that we can see. Let me see here, get back to my notes. Okay, and so going back to the racial differences, this is always great data to have, but you've got to take into context why some of these things might look the way that they do. For instance, in this case, thinking about the relative populations of these racial categories, how does this compare to their overall population in Kentucky? That is something that we are looking at doing for our next data dashboard update, including that, so you can sort of see where these things lie, and maybe considering why those might be aligned or might not be aligned, like if the percentage of children in out-of-home care is roughly the same as the children in Kentucky, then okay, that seems fairly normal. But if it's like really less or really more, then you have to sort of start looking at other reasons why that might be. The other thing you have to think about with the racial data is how these questions are asked. Sometimes the questions can be confusing as far as like if there's not enough options. People a lot of times will sometimes Latinx or Hispanic people don't necessarily believe that they're or think that they're in another race, so they will put something else instead of Hispanic. And so looking at that, and then whether or not people are asked how they identify or whether it's based on someone else's assessment of it. So keeping in mind, we do like to have this data, but keeping in mind there's maybe some flaws. And then let's see here. The last one I wanted to go over with you was the substantiated fatalities and near fatalities. If you'll notice down here, there are these little symbols at the bottom. These indicate that there are some outstanding cases that are still being looked at. So while we look like we're going on a downslope, that's to be expected. So as cases are finalized, we will update this information, at least on a yearly basis, more frequently if we can get the information. And so I expect that will change some, but we don't know by how much. So keeping in mind that this looks like it's good right now, but we have to give it a few years to see how this is going to go. Now, how this can tie directly into policy is that there was a law that passed, or that was on the table this past year, called Kyan's Law, where it would have made animal control officers, they would have had to have training on recognizing child abuse in as they go out and evaluate animal abuse, because we're starting to learn that animal abuse and child abuse and other types of abuse in the household can be connected. I believe the stats were that he had animal control officers visit 24 times in the 18 months prior to his death. And so something like that might help lower the fatality count in Kentucky. So that is sort of how data can be connected to policy. This is pretty much all that I have. I can go through the other two regions that we have, Jefferson and Southern Bluegrass. We are going to update all of the regions in our next iteration, which should be coming in July. But if you have any questions, I will be glad to take them. And I know I talk very quickly, and so apologies for that. That's just, I've tried to work on that. It hasn't changed much. So let me know if you have any questions.
Thank
I
you,
have a
Lauren.
question. Sorry, I was
Oh.
trying to find out how to raise my hand and I missed it, but decided to just talk. So I heard you say a couple of regions are up now. So
Mhm.
as of today, we couldn't search by Northern Kentucky or Eastern Kentucky, but that's coming in July. Is that what I hear?
Yes, we had a little bit of issues getting the back data from DCBS. And so like we're in the process of getting ready to update that. I'm waiting on a few more pieces and then putting everything together. So, but that should be there in July. Mhm. Okay, I will go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you all for your attention. And I'll pass back to Andrew.
Thanks again, Lauren. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat, and then we can get to them at the end or after the next policy section. Before we start diving into this year's policy outcomes, we're going to take a moment to talk about how we determine our priorities in the first place. In order to share more about how we use data to inform policy and practice recommendations and how we prepare each year for the legislative session, I'm going to turn it over to one of our FACEIT policy co-chairs, Jane Herms.
Great, thanks. I'm Jane Herms with Family Nurturing Center in Northern Kentucky, and I co-chair the public policy team with Jana Estep Jordan from Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky, which is located in Lexington. And the group is made up of FACEIT partners from all over the state, though, who really share, I think, a common goal and interest in advancing public policy. One thing I'll say is you might think that's not your cup of tea or that's not your specialty or expertise. I would say that we all have to be involved in advancing policy. We all have great organizations that provide important direct services, but to really move the needle, we also have to be able, I think, to advocate for policy change. So when you think about what those policy recommendations and priorities look like, it is not something that is cooked up by a few people at KYA and then just rolled out. I think it's a really collaborative process that includes people, again, from all across the state that look at national trends, look at what other states are doing well and that we want to emulate and repeat, what things have not gone as well. We look at what passed. So immediately after the session, the KYA staff do a great job of kind of debriefing people on what passed, what didn't pass, and being able to then look and see what do we want to elevate and raise up again next year, and what are we going to let go of. Sometimes there are timing things. I think having been on the committee for several years, there are times we really prioritize things that we think have a good chance of passing, and there are other times, even when we know something not going to pick up steam, we want to put a stake in the ground and come out publicly for or against something, and so we'll still advance something. So there's a lot of discussion that happens. We have an annual in-person meeting that's coming up in May. So if you've been thinking about joining or getting more interested in public policy, this is a great time to get involved because you're able to meet in person with people and really hash out and help go through that prioritization process to think about next year. The other meetings are virtual, so regardless of where you are in the state, it's easy to participate. I will say that especially in these times, I think that advocacy is really important, whether that's kind of a big P policy or even just making sure that your legislators, whether they are local officials or statewide officials, know what you do, know the impact of having funding potentially cut or the impact of your services. So even if you do not want to be on the full committee, but just want to know more about how you can connect with your legislators and be sort of a consistent voice for the people that you serve, I think the KYA folks are great advocates for that. So, did I miss anything?
No, I think you hit all the points. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Jim.
And if you're interested in joining, I think reach out to Shannon and we can get more information.
So now we're going to talk about, not talk, we're going to talk about some of our policy wins for this year. I'm going to share my screen. So this year, we brought real momentum and meaningful results with bipartisan support and the dedication of legislative champions and advocates all across the state. Two of FACEIT's priority bills were signed into law by the governor after being passed by the House and Senate in a very bipartisan fashion. These laws both represent critical steps toward keeping kids safe and equipping adults with the tools they need to act. First, Senate Bill 73, which was championed by Senator Rocky Adams, officially establishes the crime of sexual extortion in Kentucky law. The new law includes stronger penalties whenever a minor is involved, adds sexual extortion to the state's definition of a sex crime, and requires schools to raise awareness about the issue. Starting in 4th grade, students must be notified about this crime, and parents and caregivers of all students are notified about it. Additionally, schools and post-secondary institutions will now display age-appropriate posters with information and resources. This bill is especially important because we've seen a couple high-profile news stories out that I'm sure some of you read about just how quickly youth resort to extreme scenarios once they're put into this event. So whenever someone is sexually extorted, we've seen that a large majority of youth will commit suicide within hours after the first outreach from the perpetrator. So this law will make sure that kids are both more knowledgeable about the event, caregivers are more knowledgeable about the fact that it can happen, and that there are penalties for doing so. The other priority we have was Senate Bill 120, which was championed by Senator Chambers Armstrong. This focused on child safety in school sports by requiring coaches and athletic administrators to complete training on recognizing and reporting child abuse. The law also adds information to student athlete consent forms about Kentucky's mandated reporting laws, how to report abuse, and a reminder that students have the right to speak up if something happens to either themselves or someone else they know. This is especially important because we know that coaches spend a lot of time with the youth that are on their teams. And so we want them to have the same sort of training that teachers do and other mandated reporters, just so that they can keep the kids on their team safe. Both of these laws kind of reflect what's possible whenever data, advocacy, and policy come together. We know that Senator Chambers Armstrong spoke at our FACEIT full partner meeting last month, and she talked about how all of the data and research about sexual abuse, like in schools, and then also particularly like on like how the sports teams made her want to write this bill. So it kind of shows of if we have all the data out there, that there is like a clear thing that legislators will act even on their own. But our work still isn't done. Two of our other priorities did not pass this year, but they did gain momentum. House Bill 36, which was sponsored by Representative Tipton, is about stopping educator sexual misconduct before it happens, and then also preventing it from happening again. It would prohibit non-disclosure agreements related to misconduct involving minors. It would require thorough background and reference checks. It would define abusive conduct and strengthen training and investigation standards in schools. This bill has had bipartisan support for the past 3 years. It passed the House last year and the year before that. This year it passed the Senate through a committee substitute. Sadly, it did not end up passing. The House did not concur, so it didn't pass fully. But we know that it is an important bill to have, especially because of the fact that we know that NDAs are being signed, that misconduct is happening in schools. So we're going to keep advocating for this bill. We're going to keep reaching out to more partners to engage more people, just so we can get this past the finish line. If you would like to learn a little bit more about the misconduct that's happening in schools, a researcher, Katomi, wrote a blog for us that does a great job of explaining kind of like the data that she's seen of educator sexual misconduct, and specifically about how technology is being used to perpetrate it. Another bill that had wide support and has already been mentioned was Kyan's Law, or House Bill 194. It was championed by Representative Whitten, and was heavily influenced by the work of Kira Dunk, and who helped work on the bill, and also was one of the fiercest advocates for it, despite being only, I think she's 16 now. I think she just had a birthday. So it's a great bill for a youth to be championing. She wrote a blog on it as well, which we encourage you to read. This bill would have added animal control officers to the list of mandated reporters of child abuse. In Kentucky, everyone's already a mandated reporter, but this would have added them to that list to kind of ensure that it was more in their job description as well. It also would have ensured that they received training on recognizing the signs of maltreatment, and made progress. It made progress early in the session, but ultimately stalled. Still, the support it received shows that there's an appetite for like smart preventative solutions like this, and we plan to keep pushing it forward. We also hosted a webinar last week on the link between child and animal abuse, which we can share out later. That will be that's a very good webinar to kind of like give like the details of what is the connection. Does anyone have any questions about any of the policies? If not, oh, yes, Shannon.
No, go ahead.
No, you can. So what you guys can do next to help kind of push policy priorities forward is you can explore the dashboard. This data is very important to help inform like your work and community conversations. It's also very good to talk with legislators about it, or just to pull certain points out, being like, oh, I've seen this increase of child fatalities, near fatalities. Like Lauren said, this could be decreased if we have more people who are able to recognize the signs of child abuse. The same thing with SB 120, the fact that coaches are going to be able to recognize child abuse, that could also decrease the number of fatalities and near fatalities in the state. We'd also want you to thank your legislators if they supported Face It priority bills, letting them know their support matters. And in the interim, if you would like to reach out about maybe saying, hey, I saw this bill, it got some support early on and it didn't pass. Can you tell me more? And kind of question them of like, what happened to some of the other bills that we were pushing. And then finally, if you're not already, you can become a Face It partner and then engage in our work teams. We've talked a little bit about the Face It policy team. Next month, we're going to have that in-person, like 3-hour-long brainstorm. So if you're a Face It partner and would like to engage in that, feel free to reach out to Shannon and I, and we'll make sure that you can be a part of it. And then I'm going to stop sharing so I can take any more questions if we have them. And then Debbie has placed it in chat, but we also have a quick survey that we're doing for all of our webinars during Child Abuse Prevention Month, just to kind of help us know what you liked about the webinar, what we can improve on, and what would be useful in the future.
Thank you,
That's a
guys.
good
I think these are always really helpful for grant writing too, to be able to find statistics and sources. So besides public policy, I think that's another great use of this data. So thank you putting it together and making it available to everybody.
Thanks, Jane. I see also we have a question from Jill about what does the off season look like with policies that don't make it. First, we kind of do a lot of outreach ourselves of trying to figure out like what was some of the holdups of the policy. After we kind of figure out like what a holdup might have been, we start looking at what other partners do we need to engage, or what other kind of unlikely allies do we need to bring in to help us push those policies in the future. So it kind of takes the thing of we in that 3-hour strategy meeting, we're going to be kind of hunkering down. Shannon, did I miss anything on that one?
Yeah, I would also just add that the interim or the in-between or off-season is really the best time to be reaching out to your legislators. That's when they have a little bit more space to learn you and get to know you and build that relationship. So during the interim, which starts in June, technically, that's a great time to reach out to your legislator and offer to have a meeting with them in district where you live, whether it's to go get coffee at the local coffee shop, or, you know, if you want to meet them in Frankfurt, identify a time when you know that their committee is meeting and offer to head up to Frankfurt that day and try to catch them on a day that they're already up there. But definitely during the off season, not only is it, yeah, it's a great time for us to figure out like why things didn't work. It's also a very, very good time for people to get those connections and relationships built and let them get to know you before you need them.
And also just making sure that they know that you're upset about a bill not passing that you believe would have been very important for Kentucky's kids. I'm making especially like House Bill like 36 of just being like, I saw this didn't pass. I'm upset about it because it would have done this, and it would have substantially changed the amount of abuse we're seeing in schools. And also what Jane said of budget priorities is set very far before the session. So it's important to get into those legislator offices and meetings as soon as possible, just because we know that the budget is set months before they come back.
And as much as you can balance the, hey, I'm disappointed that this didn't pass, a thank you for the work that they did in the previous legislative session or previous legislative sessions, or if you cannot find anything that you appreciate about what they did, identify just another way to connect and just human to human identify like some commonalities so that you can start to build that. They often are hearing from folks when they're upset rather than when they are, you know, rather than a thank you, as Andrew had mentioned earlier.
I think also just as like a person, it's way better for like Lauren saying, everyone likes the carrot better. It's a lot nicer to have a conversation with someone where they're being nice to you instead of just kind of like yelling at you or berating you for something you didn't do. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. If not, we're going to be sending this out in case you joined a little late. We also have a blog up about kind of our state policy outcomes, which would be very helpful to read. It goes into like probably a little bit too much detail. I kind of have a problem that I write way too much sometimes. So if you would like to read that, feel free. And if you would like to engage either in policy work in general through FACEIT, feel free to reach out to Shannon and I. Or if you're not a FACEIT partner and you would like to become one, you can reach out to Debbie and we can help get that set up.